Hey there. So my name is Josh Rose, and I'm head of strategy from a company called IQVIA, and I also lead all of our direct-to-patient, virtual trial, studies at home, you name it, business. So first thing, just for the National Academy, thank you very much for doing this. It's just an amazing group, and it's so rewarding to spend an afternoon with people that are passionate about this and want to see it moving forward. So it's very exciting. I mean, I think the fact that a company like IQVIA, and for those that don't know, IQVIA came together from a company called IMS, a big health data company, and Quintiles, which is a very large CRO. Quintiles is fully in. And the fact that a large CRO like Quintiles is saying, we recognize the fact that this is transformational, it's important, we talked about the rising cost of studies, patient burden, et cetera, says a lot about the power of this and where we think it's going to go. So reactions, I'm going to talk about 4 stakeholder groups. I'll go through it relatively quickly. We'll talk about patients, talk about investigators, regulators, pharma, and then just a little bit of thoughts on mechanics. So first thing, I agree with everything that we said, that patients are an N of 1. It's really wrong to think about patients as a group because they're so different. So patients are peds, and they don't even know that they're in a study. Patients could be teenagers that actually have lives and can't take away and don't want to be anywhere close to a site, and they want to use technology. Patients can be supporter of patients, adults that have parents or have kids that need to participate in study. And then we have elderly patients. And elderly patients come in multiple sizes, right? And we know because we conduct a lot of patient focus groups, there's elderly patients that say, I'd like the idea, right? Like Adrian's 80-year-old father. There's other elderly patients that say, I actually want a more physical interaction because it's part of why I participate in a study. So, N of 1, each one needs to be looked at differently. And I love the idea of flexibility because I think that's key. Without patients, without their awareness, without their participation, we don't have studies. Let's move on to regulators. Our impression from working with the FDA is extremely positive. So the FDA is progressive, is very open to this, and wants to see it happen. So kudos to the FDA for their stance and for participating in things like CITI and other organizations. That being said, they have a very important role that comes in 2 forms. I think that we're spending way too much time trying to figure out what the FDA is going to think about this. Whether it has to do with shipping meds to patients' homes, whether it has to do with if I can tell you how many times I've had discussion on MS studies about whether a 6-minute walk test is better using actigraphy or having an MS patient transfer to a site for 30 minutes and then do it there, you wouldn't believe it. So, I mean, you would. But there's so many examples of, I think the FDA has a critical role to take this body of stuff that we're wasting so much time talking about and putting some thought around it, really smart people like right to my left, and actually coming out with a position so we can spend more time on developing studies, bringing the patients. So that's item number 1. Item number 2, the FDA is, you guys know this, it's not only about the US, right? When we talk about studies are global. The global regulators, whether it's in China, Japan, Italy, MHRA in the UK, they look to the FDA for guidance. And we do this. So I have the luxury of spending time with regulators across the globe, and the number 1 question that they ask me is, what does the FDA think? So I think the FDA plays a critical role over here in helping this. So patients, regulators, let's talk about investigators. Come in multiple sizes. There's those that say, absolutely not on my watch. I make a lot of money off of clinical research at sites the way it is right now. And we get it, right? There's kind of a who moved my cheese, and we get it. On the other hand, there's other investigators that say, man, it's about time. Right? And especially younger investigators that are smart, that are eager, that are energetic and want to conduct research, but guess what? They don't want to get into the business of running a clinical site. In a way, what we're creating over here is somewhere like Uber for clinical research, right? Any researcher now doesn't necessarily have to open a physical site, hire clinical trial coordinators, expose themselves to the business risk of keeping studies enrolling, but they can participate using, so there's a lot of promise over there, and we could talk about that more. The number of participants, investigators in clinical research is flat, right? So we believe this is a way to get more young, energetic, and interested researchers in. Pharma. The last group over here. So it's interesting. We spend a lot of time talking to pharma, and again, we see a lot, and I think Kim was spot on in her comment about change management, right? And I think that what we see is a lot of interest and a lot of excitement, but then it stalls. And it stalls a little bit because not on my watch, I don't want it on my study, or I don't want to be the first, or Craig said it nicely, I want to do a pilot. And I thought that was great, right? And so I think the way to get there is for senior executives in pharma to be able to say, this is important, and you will not be, of course, you're going to be held accountable for patient risk and safety, but if you fail, that will be acceptable because we're moving things forward. So I think this notion of somehow alleviating the gridlock that exists, I think would be really important. And I think that is going to help a lot. That being said, we see a lot of innovation and a lot of movement, which is terrific. Last thing on mechanics. There's a notion in the industry that virtual trials is technology. And I'm sure that we would agree it's not about technology. Technology is an important enabler. Maybe it's 30% about technology. But a lot of it is around the process and science and how do you bring the complex pieces together. In closing, I would say that every study has a way to make it happen. Right? You just need to think about, how do you do it? So I have a team, and when we look at protocols, the number one thing we're not allowed to say is no. Anybody that says no is off the team. The reason why is there's a way to get there. It may not be perfect. Kim talked also about this notion of we like everything being integrated. It's not going to be. But we can still deliver it. It may be swivel chair. It may be side-by-side systems. But at the end of the day, it can be a 100% virtual site in a very complex area like oncology, or a long-term, open label study as well. Thank you.
Great.